Barber of the Virtual Sewing Guild. Welcome to my sewing room. Today I want to talk to you about twin needles. Twin needles are a wonderful sewing notion that can make your project go from ordinary to extraordinary. So let's take a look at some of the projects I have over here. The one down here at the bottom is a beautiful little cushion that would look great in a lot of your homes. But let's look at the twin needle work right here. And this is what you might have seen before. It's where you use a twin needle and a pin tucking foot and you stitch on a piece of fabric and it creates these beautiful pin tucks. And you can just do row after row after row of them to create a beautiful embellishment. Now the other way you can use twin needles is up here in our little wall hanging sample. And in this instance we've used a wider twin needle and we've used a decorative stitch, and it has created a beautiful background for our embroidery. So again, it can just take your projects from ordinary to extraordinary. Now I want you to take a minute to look at a few of the twin needles I have right down here. I want you to notice that they come in different sizes. This one right here is a very narrow one. It's probably like a 1.6 twin needle. And that 1.6 means it's the distance between the two needles. And as you can see, there is one shank at the top. So you insert it just like you do a regular needle. And then you have the red bar that holds the two needles. Our next twin needle again has one shank, a red bar, but look at the distance between those needles. It's a little bit larger. This is maybe a 3.0, I'm not sure. Then if we come over here, this is probably a 4, no, this is probably a 6.0, and I believe they go all the way up to 8.0. Now the thing you need to know when choosing your twin needle is what's the biggest twin needle that your sewing machine can accommodate. So if your sewing machine can do 6mm stitches, the largest twin needle I would recommend is a 5.0 twin needle. If your sewing machine can do 9mm stitches, the largest twin needle I'd recommend is about an 8.0. And those would be if you were doing a straight stitch. But if you're doing a decorative stitch, you have to do a little bit of figuring out the correct needle to use. We're not going to go into that this time. I just wanted to let you know that information. So give me a minute and we're going to move over to the sewing machine and talk about threading for the twin needle. Now I want to show you how easy it is to insert your twin needle. I've removed my regular needle. I have a twin needle in my hand and I simply insert it just like I do a regular needle. Tighten it up, I finger tighten it, and then I use a screwdriver for my machine also. Now let's talk about threading a little bit. Some people are going to tell you to thread one on the right hand side of your tension disc and one on the left hand side of your tension disc, and your tension disc is right in here. I don't do it that way. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. But what I do is I take both my threads. I don't know that you can see them. I have a green one and a purple one. I take both of my threads, I hold them together, and I simply thread my machine as normal, put my foot down to get some tension, and then I separate. Well, actually you can go through the last thread guide, and then after that last thread guide, I will separate them and thread each needle. Now the thing about the needle is that your needle threader isn't going to work, so you're going to have to manually thread your needles, and I know that's going to take a minute, so I'll do that. But the other thing I want to talk about is your threads up here at the top. So I have one spool laying down in the well of the machine, and I like that. On this machine, my other option is a stand-up spool pin. I don't like to use that because I feel that I get too much drag on the spool. So I chose not to use that, and I'm using this thread stand that is sitting over beside my machine. So this will allow the thread to come off easily without putting too much tension on the thread as it goes through. So let me get the needles threaded and I'll be back and show you how this works. Well, with the help of my glasses, I was able to successfully thread those needles. It can be a challenge. I'm very spoiled with our needle threaders. Now, I used 2 different colors of thread on this just because I wanted you to see what each thread was doing. On most projects, when I use them, I use the same color thread in each needle. If you don't have 2 spools of the same thread, you could wind a bobbin for one of your spools. So you'd have a wound bobbin that you would thread through the needle, and you'd have your spool of thread. So down here we have a 3mm twin needle. My machine does 9mm stitches, and I have a foot that will accommodate a 9mm stitch in it. But, like I said, my twin needle is 3.0, so 9mm minus the width of my needle, which is 3.0, leaves me with 6mm for my stitch. Well, I don't like to go all the way to 6. I like to leave a little room. So over here, I've called up my stitch. I like this little serpentine stitch. It's all forward movement, which is very good for twin needle. And I'm at a 5.0 wide, and I've adjusted it down to a length that I like the looks of. So when I'm going to stitch this out, for this example, I have a piece of fabric fused to a piece of batting, so I'm getting that kind of quilted look. And just to be sure that I don't break my twin needle, I recommend that you hand walk through the entire stitch. So you see that it goes as far over to the right and as far over to the left, and that it will not break your twin needle. Now, I actually have already tested this, so I know, but I'm just going to walk through so you can see what I recommend for you to do. So here we go. That's as far over as that stitch right there. It doesn't hit the foot, so we're good. Now we're going to stitch. And you don't want to go really, really fast on this. You want to give your machine just a little bit of time for these stitches to form and for the bobbin to be caught by both of the needles on the back. So what you're doing is creating 2 rows of this straight stitch serpentine on the front, and on the back you're creating a little zigzag look. So let me pull this out and show you what this looks like. So again, I chose to use 2 different colors of thread so that you could see what it looked like. In many of your projects, you'll use the same color, but we have our left needle over here in the purple or mauve, and our right needle in the green. And if we look at this, let's flip it over. This is going to be really hard to see the bobbin thread, but when you look at the back, you can see that you've got these little tiny zigzag stitches on the back, and that's because of the way the twin needle interacts with the bobbin. So that's your back, that's your front, and that's how you would create something similar to this wonderful little wall hanging that we have over here. And you can see that the twin needle work is done in the background. So I covered my entire piece of fabric. I fused my fabric to the batting. I twin needle stitched all of it, and then I did the embroidery on top. And don't forget, you can always use a small twin needle, your pin tuck foot, and create traditional pin tucks. So that's a brief overview for you on your twin needles. I hope that you'll look in your sewing room and find that you already have some. If not, go to your local sewing machine dealer, purchase some twin needles, and have some fun. From my sewing machine to yours, happy creating.